Chapter 14. After the shock of discovering he'd inadvertently taken on a new position wore off, and Devon's temper had exhausted itself, he called Ethan and asked to meet with him again. Devon promised not to attack him this time. I knew what he was going to do. He'd asked my opinion before making the call. As a gesture of goodwill, Devon invited Ethan to come by the apartment. The thought was that Devon wouldn't want to start a fight somewhere humans could witness it, and where the cops might get called. Moreover, letting him in our apartment was an unspoken way of saying we trusted him. Ethan was sitting in our living room, stiff and leery, almost as if expecting to be told to leave the area and never come back. "I want to apologize to you," Devon's voice was sincere. "I had no intention of taking your position. I was angry and frustrated over the situation, and I took it out on you. If there were a way to undo it, I would." A surprised look crossed Ethan's face. This wasn't what he'd expected. Devon continued, "I'd appreciate it if you'd stick around, help me learn the ropes, run the team, and serve as my second in command." The shock on Ethan's face was genuine. "You want me to not only stay, but to help you with the team?" "Yeah, why not? You know what's going on, you've been doing it for years, and I'd be foolish to throw away that much experience." Devon paused. "I'm not saying I won't change things, I'm sure I will. But your experience and knowledge of the team are invaluable, I know that." "Did the Aniquitos put you up to this?" Ethan's eyes narrowed. I really couldn't blame him for being suspicious. "No, but he approved when I told him what I wanted to do." Ethan nodded, and together they started planning. Together, Ethan and Devon contacted all the enforcers and set up a meeting. They had them gather at the ranch. While we didn't know who could pose a threat, Devon's unwillingness to be that far away from me insisted I go along. We were one of the first to arrive. Devon stood to one side talking quietly with Ethan. I had no interest in what they were saying, but I didn't want Devon to worry about me, so I dropped the tailgate on his pickup and sat on it, putting me close to where they stood. About 20 men showed up. I looked over at the group and recognized several faces. Some of the faces I recognized from around town, but I knew a few of them a little bit better. Once everyone was there, Devon hopped up onto the tailgate and stood beside me. From there, he could see everyone, and they got a clear view of him. He waited until they all noticed him and fell silent. "I'm sure that by now you've all heard that I'm taking over as Theron." He paused for a moment, watching their reactions. "You also may have noticed that Troy failed to return from his trip with Nicki and myself." Some members of the crowd looked around, as if only now noticing Troy's absence. Devon continued, "While we were in Texas, Troy attempted to kidnap my pregnant mate. He'd checked with me before making the announcement, so I was able to keep from reacting when he said it. I managed to prevent him from taking her, but he escaped while I was concerned with her health." He looked around the group, taking in everyone's reactions before continuing. "I can only assume that Troy is part of the group that has been harassing us for the last several months. For those of you who may not know, this is a supremacist group that believes that anyone who doesn't shift or shift naturally," he put air quotes around the word, "is inferior to anyone who shifts." He watched for opposition. "This group and its members is on my personal shit list. I will not tolerate any of them on my team. I'm giving you today and today only to walk away, give up your position as an enforcer with no questions asked. After today, if I discover that you are a part of the group, and believe me, I will find out, you'll be instantly fired and subject to any punishment the Aniquitos deems appropriate." Devon watched the crowd for reactions. "You can't do that." A voice came from the middle of the group. I didn't see who said it, but Devon may have. Devon smirked. "Not only can I and will I, but I'll administer the punishment myself and enjoy it." He looked back over the group, letting his words sink in before continuing. "Let me remind you, Nicki is the Aniquitos' goddaughter. He's almost as protective of her as I am. In addition, just in case you get the idea to go rogue and take pack business to the police, Nicki has a brother on the STPD. Consider for a moment how far each one of you would go to protect your own sisters. Do you think he would do any less? While he hadn't actually said that Rain would break the law to protect me, he'd left them believing it just the same. He waited a moment, letting each of the men consider his words and implications before beginning again. Now I'll answer any questions you might have as best as I can. I may not have all the answers yet, but I'll answer as honestly as I can. Are you going to change our assignments? I recognized Caden's voice. I'm not currently planning to. However, I do plan on going over everything: strengths, weaknesses, talents, etc., and some assignments may be changed. Also, I may have to shuffle people to fill any vacancies we have tomorrow. Devon replied. How fair can we expect you to be? Another voice came from the back, one I didn't recognize. With the exception of anyone determined to be a member of the group that has caused Nicki and I so many problems, I see no reason why I can't be fair with all of you. What about those of us you've already had problems with? This time I knew the voice. It was Gabriel, one of Bill's personal enforcers. Devon looked at him a moment before speaking, choosing his words carefully. You're the only one I see here that I've ever had any kind of confrontation with, Gabriel. When that happened, I was operating under a misconception and some extreme circumstances. Those circumstances have changed. I have no problem with you. Devon looked out over the group. If you have any doubts, please come to the front of the group. As Gabriel made his way to the front of the small crowd, Devon used our mental link. Will you go stand next to him? Please? I hopped off the tailgate and stepped over to stand beside Gabriel at the front of the group. Touch him. I laid one hand on Gabriel's arm. Devon raised his brows at Gabriel. My point. Gabriel nodded in understanding. Well taken. I went back to the truck and hopped up to where I'd been before. Gabriel stayed in his new spot. The group asked a bunch of questions, and Devon answered them as best he could. When there were no more questions, he dismissed the men, and we waited while they left, all but Ethan. When just the three of us remained, Devon turned to Ethan. Where do we stand in finding out who killed the girl? Not good. We know she was beaten and died somewhere else, but not where, and then she was dumped at the college. That's public knowledge. It's not public knowledge that she was pack. Do we know anything else? Not really. By the time we got someone to the scene, her body was gone, and there had been so many cops and techs over the area, it was impossible to pick up any useful sense. We weren't able to get anyone in to see or smell her body before they released it to the funeral home, so no help there either. Basically, what you're telling me is we have nothing, only what the police have made public knowledge. Devon said. It was a statement, not a question. Yeah, pretty much. Ethan admitted, his tone unhappy. Devon sighed, looking at the ground a moment before looking up again. It's not optimal, but we can still work with it. He took another deep breath. I need to know who she was dating, who she had dated in the past. Anything you can find about her family. The cops are looking at all that. Ethan dismissed it. I know, but we have more information than they do. We might be able to see something that they don't. We need to know everything we can, to look at it all. Her body was dumped in a public place so that she would be found. Odds are, she wasn't a random victim, and she was killed for a reason. We need to find that reason. The reason will lead us to the killer. I get you everything we have, and what we don't have, I'll find out. Good. Let me know when you have it. We'll sit down and take a look at it together, see what we can find. Will do. We left, heading over to see Bill and let him know how things went. I think it went well, Devon said later. He was telling Bill about the meeting with the enforcers. You might talk to your men, see how they thought it went. He meant Gabriel and Terry, the two men who spent their days keeping the Aniquitos safe. Like I said I would, I've asked Ethan to stay on to help me out and be my second. That's good. I also asked him to get me anything he can find on Annette Beigler. I don't care if it seems irrelevant, I want it. I'm going to look at every angle and see if we can't figure out why she's dead and who's responsible. Devon continued. Oh, and you should know. We may have to replace some enforcers. I told them what happened with Troy. I made it clear that I won't tolerate any of that damn supremacist group on my team. I told them if they were a part of that group or felt for any reason that they couldn't follow my orders, they had today to resign with no questions asked. As of tomorrow, any enforcer found to be a part of the group will be fired and face any punishment you feel appropriate. All right. Devon grinned. I also told them that I'd administer the punishment myself and enjoy it. Good, Bill said. Speaking of Texas, Bill's mood turned serious. After what happened with Troy, someone we thought we could trust, I feel like we need to keep a guard near Nicki all the time. Someone we know we can trust. I can't take a guard to work with me. I knew how strange it would look if I started taking some guy to work with me. Bill looked grim. I warned you that we might need to find you another job, one that would be cover for your traveling for us. It looks like we found another reason to do that, sooner rather than later. I sighed. I wanted to argue, sulk, anything. I didn't want another job. I liked the one I had. Nevertheless, I understood his reasoning, and that it would make things safer for me and for the pack. As much as I might want to, I knew that to fight it would be pointless and childish. What do you have in mind? Bill looked surprised at how easily I gave in. I have an antique shop that needs a purchasing agent. It's good work when you're home, and trips can be reasonably excused as part of the job, as looking for acquisitions. Putting a guard on site will be no problem. So I'd what? Shop for a living? I wanted some idea of what the job would actually be. Pretty much. Some in person, some over the web. You may even take some trips exclusively for purchasing, not just for cover. I'll see to it that you get any training you need. What about after the baby's born? He shrugged. It's not a front-end position. I don't see why you couldn't have flexible hours, maybe work from home part-time, and maybe take the baby into the shop sometimes. Can I think about it? You can. If this position doesn't suit you, I can find another. I want you safe. Sooner rather than later. I'll be very unhappy if you insist on waiting until something more serious happens before you'll let me make sure you're safe. Bill scowled at me. Okay, I said, not afraid of his glower. I knew he'd never do anything to hurt me. He just wanted to be sure I was safe. What kind of salary? I had to ask. More than you make now, that's for sure. You'll get a salary for the day job and another, less regular, for dealing with non-shifters. I don't understand. We're not charging people to try to shift them, and the trips alone aren't cheap. How can you afford to pay me too? Don't worry about that. He smiled, and the look reminded me that I'd known this man all my life. He wasn't just a pack leader to me, he was family. The pack has plenty of money. I need to give at least 2 weeks' notice. I can't just walk out on Mr. Weatherby. It wouldn't be right. I went back to what we'd been talking about before. I'm more concerned with your safety than right, but I understand. Give notice, work out your time. We can put some guards around the building. It's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. All right. I agreed reluctantly. Devon had remained silent during the whole exchange. I suspected that he thought Bill would have better luck talking me into this, and if he did, he would have been right. For some reason I didn't fully understand, Bill was able to make me see reason much quicker than most. Also, I have a couple of houses for the two of you to look at. I think you might find one of them to your liking. Bill gave us the details on the houses, and then Devon and I headed home. On the way home, I considered how to go about tendering my resignation. I didn't want to lie to Mr. Willoughby. I'd worked for him for years and I liked him. At the same time, I knew I couldn't tell him the whole truth either. I could simply tell him I had a better offer, more money, except that if he believed that money was my only reason for leaving, he might offer me a raise to get me to stay. I could tell him it was about the baby. I just didn't know if it would be believable for me to leave a job that he knew I loved, because I am pregnant. I decided to think about it for a while longer before making up my mind.